Welcome to Bruce Hurwitz Presents Meet the Experts. I'm your host, Bruce Hurwitz of Hurwitz Strategic Staffing. I hope you'll consider us for all your staffing, career counseling, and professional writing needs. Shortly, I'll be joined by Titus Walker, and we'll be discussing changing business models. Meet the Experts is sponsored by P&K CPAs. P&K is a full-service accounting firm. They provide accounting and consulting services to businesses ranging from startups to small and mid-cap companies to nonprofits as well as high net worth individuals. Contact them today for a free consultation at info@pk-cpas.com or call them at 973-882-8810. They will be happy to be of service. Titus, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
You are a very rare returning guest.
Yeah.
And I appreciate this.
Yeah.
Take a moment or two, introduce yourself to our viewers, and then I'll explain why I invited you back.
Absolutely. So my name is Titus. I run a esports league. So we run basically like the NFL of video games. And we have been doing that for now 4.5 years. And we're going on our 8th season this season. So it's a $100,000 grand prize for the teams that win, and it's a lot of fun.
Well, the reason that I wanted you to come back is you said a lot of things interesting, but one thing that really intrigued me, and if I misrepresent, then you'll have ample time to correct. When you started, you were running your company based on the games, the specific games.
Yeah.
And then you had difficulties because the owners of those games wanted a slice of the action.
Yeah.
So you changed it from the games to their genres.
Yep.
And that is very difficult for a lot of business owners to do, to change their business model literally in mid-stride.
Yeah.
Explain how you came to the determination and how you dealt with it.
Yeah. And it's so changing the business model completely from the one title to all the other titles was not something that we were just doing for ourselves, but from a sense of we didn't have an example of that in the world, period. So we're the only ones in the world that do it based on the genres.
Now, when you say titles, you mean individual games.
Yeah, game titles. Yep. So rather than having a individual game title tournament, you have a tournament where you're trying to be the best gamer and combining all of the titles and playing them all. One of the things that we found when we first started this journey was I think about it like a big like net. You know, gaming has this huge net that it casts over people, if you will, where people really enjoy gaming. It's addictive in some ways. It's a lot of fun. It allows people to kind of escape into a different virtual world. It teaches a lot of things in life as well. So there's always like that good and the bad sides of gaming. But one thing that is true is there are 3 billion gamers in the world. And so it has this huge net, right? And I always think of it like when you decide to play a single game, you essentially shrink that net down. So what was happening was people would come into the business and we would say, oh, we're a gaming arcade or a gaming venue, right? They come in and then we're saying, oh, we're running a Tekken tournament. And now the person that walked in the door, we know they're a gamer, but what are the chances they are a Tekken player, right? So now that net has a massive hole in it, right? And so you had this huge pot, 3 billion people that were coming. This is most likely one of those 3 billion people, but you're playing this game and now you've kind of eliminated all the other people that walk in. So if 10 people walk in that door, you have a good chance that none of them play the game that you're actually interested in playing. And so once I recognized that as an issue, I was like, well, I want to make sure my net has as few holes as possible. I want to make sure that I control as much of this process as possible. And I want to make sure if somebody walks through my door, I have the ability to capture that person, to get that person to stay and come back, right? And the best way to do that is to have a net that doesn't have those holes. And so we started to formulate the plan and how to put together a league that had more of a gamer focus. We want to capture all 3 billion. We don't want to just capture the 1 million that play this game or the 2 million that play this game. There's a lot. That's a lot of people, but why not go after the 3 billion instead? It's how we things. And so that pivot, you ask, the difficulty of that, basically we're starting it up. We're coming up with the concept. It was tough because all of the people that were investors at that time that were coming into this business with me at that point did not agree with that choice. So it was just me that thought that this was a good idea at that time. And they all ended up actually leaving the business for that reason. And they wanted things to be done the same way that it's done already. The same way they see things happening now, but what they're used to seeing is how they wanted things to continue. And so that was one of the reasons that a lot of them ended up, or well, all of them except me, ended up bailing in the beginning there. So to say it was tough is a understatement.
You've mentioned a few things. First, you began by talking about how video games are addictive.
Yes.
I don't know if you're old enough to remember pinball machines.
Yes.
But they were also addictive.
Yep.
There's really nothing new under the sun, except that while in my day you had to get quarters and find some way to get to the arcade,
yep.
Now all you have to do is have the computer, have the program if it's necessary, or internet access, and you can do it from your bedroom.
Exactly. And reading is addictive, right? Like
sure.
reading is addictive. Writing is addictive. Sure. If you love something, it can become an addiction. It really doesn't matter what that something is. It's all about how you utilize it, right?
Absolutely correct. I've had people ask me, do I have any real addictions?
Yeah.
I don't mean like, you want to have a Reese's peanut butter cup every time you go to the store. That's
right.
not an addiction. That's just a little bit of silliness.
Yeah.
So, the only real addiction I have is reading. If I'm not reading, I feel like something's missing. They said, well, an addiction has to hurt you. And I said, no, it doesn't. If you can control the addiction, I have problems with my eyes, so I limit myself to the number of pages I read a day. I mean, it depends on the chapter. I don't like to stop in the middle of a chapter, but basically.
But to that point, I mean, that reading that much can have an impact on your eyes, right? So on your eyesight. So that again, it really just comes down to how you utilize it. But yeah, I mean, gaming is addictive, and I'd say just like anything else is, but it has so many things that it teaches as well, and that's something that we've been able to, through this process, we've been able to really narrow down the different games and the different genres and the real life skills that they teach, because we found that there's a specific type of person that plays fighting games versus a person that plays sports games, or a person that they all have very, very similar traits when they're in a certain genre. And so fighting game players, they are very similar, and they tend to like patterns, like any type of like repetition patterns, because that's what the fighting game really speaks to, that skill. Everything is a pattern. They have to put in a certain combination of buttons in order to get a certain output, right? And so they tend to be very, very meticulous in that way, and they like things to be a certain, like it has to be this way in order, or it doesn't really work. And that's normally the typical fighting game player. And it's a real life skill. Understanding patterns and pattern recognition is a real life skill. And so we found a way to basically kind of hone in on that skill and teach the other genres in that same way, just like UFC and fighting and the way they did that. You use that to teach other skills, because in a shooting game, you have more of a hand-eye coordination, right? But another thing in shooting games that you can utilize is if your opponent continuously is doing the same pattern, they're running in the same direction, and you are calculated enough to recognize that pattern, you can actually become a pretty talented shooting game player without the hand-eye coordination, right? Or a a leader in the shooting game where you have other people that maybe have better hand-eye coordination, but you can recognize a pattern like that and then be able to tell them what the opponent's going to do based on that. And so it's something that we have found. We found the way to scientifically have a real life skill come out of the game and then teach them a new skill utilizing that.
I've got a lot of questions for you, and I don't know what order, so I'll just build on what you just said. Do players know in advance what game they're going to play? They know the genre, but do they know the specific game?
They only know at the beginning of every season, we announce the 33 games that we're going to be playing that season. So based on whichever games have sponsored and paid us to be on that wheel, we put those games on the wheel, and it's normally evenly set up for each genre. So they know what games to practice throughout the season. But once they get into a match, that roulette wheel will spin, and it's going to land on whatever game, and then that's the game they play. So they have to be prepared to play anything, any day.
So they know the games on some level.
Yes. Yeah, they know the 33 games that are possible of being played.
Now, you got you were not able to get your backers, your partners, whatever you want to call them, out of their comfort zone.
Yeah.
So when you switch from games to genre, you lost them.
Yeah.
What would you do different today to keep them if you wanted to? And
yeah.
Would you
definitely don't want to.
Okay.
But so that's a good question. I've learned through this process that expecting people to understand your vision or your dream is really nonsense. Like, it's really silly to do, because them not believing in it helped me hone in on what it was. So when you think about, like, when someone questions you, or they attack or whatever, all it really does is sharpen you. It sharpens your skills. Or you can back down and give up and say, yeah, oh, all right, but if you continue down the path that you're headed and you listen to what they're saying and you use it, you can sharpen your own skills throughout that process. So I don't know that there's ever a world that I keep them in that moment and still don't sharpen my skills the way that it did. It sharpened me so much to be able to go to the next person that had 10 different reasons why I shouldn't do it, and be able to either answer them or not answer them, and then go back to the drawing board and say, I need to figure this out. Like, so all of the people that kind of naysayed, if you will, allowed me to reach the moment that I'm at now, where I am, very confidently walking into rooms with, the head of major brands and major companies, and knowing that I know my stuff. And I know it because I've been tested so many times starting with them.
Now, there's one thing about changing a business plan. There's one thing about changing your, for lack of a better word, partners. I don't know if you remember this, but it had to be the early 1990s, AOL sent out to every home in the country, anybody who had a mailbox, got an AOL disk for free. And it wasn't just one, it was multiple. And they would give you, I don't remember, I think it was 10 hours of free time on AOL. And what people would do was just to set up different accounts when their 10 free hours were up. It was great for marketing. The marketing guys did a phenomenal job. But nothing is, success is a two-edged sword. Marketing did great. The IT department, not so much, and AOL crashed.
Yep.
Now, if you're going after 3 billion gamers, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm certain you don't literally want to get 3 billion individuals playing your games,
No.
because your servers would
Yeah.
get up and leave you.
Right.
How do you limit when you've got an audience of 3 billion, and it's a real possibility that a lot of them will be interested? How do you limit the amount of interaction so success doesn't ruin you?
Yeah. That's a really good question. I think that in my experience, so we're on our 8th season, and what I've learned is it limits itself in the sense of there are, and maybe I've just gotten lucky, but there are so many people that have interest in doing something like this, right? They have interest in it, but the work ethic or something is just missing. There's something that they aren't willing to put into to actually achieving their goals. Everyone wants to be a pro gamer. Everyone wants to like, if you ask the average 40-year-old and under if they would be a pro gamer for a living, they're all gonna say yes, right? What game they would play, who knows? But it's something that, 2 out of 3 households are gamers. So in the US. So with that being the case, 2 out of 3 people will probably say, if I could just play video games for a living, absolutely, I would do that. That would be great, right? But what is missing is that the reality isn't there. The reality of being a pro gamer is very different than wanting to be a pro gamer. In the same way that the reality of being an NBA player or a rapper or a singer or a rock star, like whatever it is, the reality of it is very different than that allure of it. It's like the iceberg, right? You only see the tip of it, and most of it's under. That's the reality of all of these jobs and all of these careers. That's why, in my opinion, that is one of the reasons why the NBA is so successful. The NFL is so successful, because as much as people aspire to be that, seeing it done is a whole different thing. You can aspire all you want, but in reality, it is very difficult to do. And so the aspiration allows you to have the viewers. The aspiration also allows you to continue to push the agenda and push the narrative and get better and better and better players. Just when I thought we had the best player ever in the league, a new player came in and they're a rookie and they're absolutely amazing, right? And they grow at a much faster pace than that last person, and they're leveling up much quicker than that other person. And I'm like, wow, this has got to be the best person ever. And then another person comes in, and that is like, it limits itself is the answer. Like, it's like, as much as, and we still, all the people that came in and they're all fans, they all watch the show, they're all still participating, but they've reached their peak, and now the next generation is coming in. And it's not because they couldn't do it, it's just that they weren't willing to put in the same amount of effort that next person was willing to do.
It's like the gunfights on Main Street in Dodge City, that once whoever's the fastest draw then has to deal with the pipsqueak that comes in and wants to challenge him.
Yep. And it's continuous. It happens continuously. And so it's, go ahead.
Good.
Yeah.
That's a positive. When you are building your business and you've got to change your business model, and you've got to hope that you won't grow to such an extent that you do yourself harm, that you can't handle it anymore, it leads to the question of an exit strategy.
Yeah.
If you don't want to answer this question, you don't have to. But in your case, do you have an exit strategy? Do you want simply to leave this to your children? Do you want to find a buyer and be bought out by, I don't know who in your industry, but
I've always said that I want to take the company public, and that I want that to be the exit strategy. And the reasoning for that is, I think that Yeah, I mean, I think that gaming right now is owned by, 7 to 10 major developers. It's a $300 billion market, and most of the money that's coming in and going out is going to the same developers that just have the money to be able to do that. It's very rare you see breakouts that aren't coming from a developer or a distributor that's already come out with the most popular games already. And so we're trying to create a marketplace for new developers to be able to enter the market, right? And we as the I see us as like Apple Music or Spotify or Uber or Netflix. We're the platform that these developers can go to say, hey, you have a bunch of gamers, you have a bunch of viewers. Can you play my game? And now the smaller developers can start to put themselves on the map through us and have a community of gamers playing, watching, participating, learning, mastering their game, which then allows them to break out into the market in a way that right now only the biggest developers have access to. And so I think the continuation of that is taking it public and allowing the public to kind of determine, the shareholder determine the games that are in participate and the games that are popular. I don't know that works out in real life, and I think that's something that we'll determine. But it's always been my thought process.
Now, I can only speak for myself. There was a time when I enjoyed watching golf and bowling. Today, you'd have to pay me a lot of money to watch golf and bowling. I mean, I don't know why when I was younger I found it interesting. Is there a revenue stream? Gamers, I assume, have to pay to play. But what about viewers? If somebody doesn't want to play, they just want to watch, is that exciting enough for that to be a revenue stream?
Anybody paying attention to you where you can get like access to their data is always a revenue stream because advertisers want that. I would say for us, our customer is the developer. The advertisers, the developers, those are our main customers. Our product, and not in the product way, but similar to like a Facebook, our product is actually the gamers. Because we are going to sell the gamers and the ability for the gamers to game and become a part of their community to the developers. And then in turn, the developers are going to pay the players to be a part of that community. So the players become pro gamers just by they become pros and they make money just to play these games. The developers end up making money because of the hype that goes with the pros playing your game. So when you have these big communities, like last season, we had almost 800,000 viewers, right? Though that type of number now means 800,000 people were able to see these games. So if your game right now that you're developing, we talked to a developer recently that's raised $40 million. They plan on putting 20 of it towards advertising. Right now, if they spent that same 20 million in advertising, their chances of converting a gamer are slim to none. Like getting someone to play a new game that doesn't have any hype, that isn't backed by anything, is extremely difficult. I mean, I think the average, we looked it up, was like $448 to get one person to play. And you're not going to make that back. That money's not going to be made back by that one person playing. Your hope is that one person is going to bring 10 more people, right? But imagine if you could shortcut that, go to a community that has over 800,000 viewers and has over 600 pro gamers that will play your game all the time to master it because that's their goal, with $100,000 prize pool. Would you, instead of spending a full 20 million on that, would you take some of that money and give it to the fast forward button and say, hey, here you go, you can play my game. And now automatically have a community of people watching and playing.
So basically, you are not in the business of providing gamers with games to play. You're in the business of providing developers with people who will play the games and people who will watch the people playing the games.
Yep, we are essentially a pro league that, well, we are more like a Spotify, like I said, that kind of shades itself as a pro league in order to get the people involved. Is, you know, when we get to a point, you got to think 33 games. If each developer just paid us $5,000, that comes down to about $5 per gamer in our league, which is nothing. They're spending, instead of 448, they're spending $5, right? That gives us the ability to do a prize pool of almost 190 or 160, $190,000 just from that $5,000 per developer. And that's just for one season. We do 3 a year. So that means we're making almost $600,000, right? From just that, just $5,000 per developer. Now, as that grows and we get a community of, you know, 10,000, a million, whatever, how much are you going to spend as a developer to have a community of 10,000 people playing your game consistently for the next 4 months? What is that going to be worth to you? Because you've spent all this money on developing this game. Of course you want people playing it. And what are your other options? If it's not us.
Do you provide the gamers with the games?
No, the gamers buy them.
They buy them.
Yeah. So, and that's our goal, is to provide them with the games. Like, eventually we want our pros at least to get access to the game. And then we have our G League, our collegiate leagues, our high school leagues. Those will all, they'll pay their way, right? But the pro league, they get the games included, right? But all the other leagues, now we get a code, we become ambassadors, we put the game on the wheel, and now everybody that buys it gets 10% off using our code, and we get 5% of that. What does that equate to, right? And so it's more than just the business plan really is one that is giving access to smaller developers, which there are tons. There's 2,808 developers in the US alone. 2,808 video game developers in the US alone. Okay. They're spending on average $500,000 to $150 million to develop a game. Okay. Half of their budget goes towards advertising. Half. So even the small indie games that are only spending $500,000 to develop a game, 250 of it is advertising. So if you could spend, again, $5,000 here, would you do it?
I'm laughing because I remember the first video game, ping pong, where you just moved a bar up to block the ball from disappearing. Yeah. And we thought that was the greatest thing since sliced bread. Titus, we actually have more or less gotten out of time. So what I want to do is share your contact information. And since you've been on the show before, you know how the game is played. My final question is there anything that I did not ask you that you wish I had asked you? And if I had asked you, what would you have said?
No, our finals this season is June 8th. We're actually going to the DeVos Theater in Michigan. So depending on when this comes out, we may have announced that. I'm guessing, does this come out immediately?
Yeah, you'll have it in 20 minutes.
All right, well, and there you go. We're going to the DeVos Theater. We haven't announced it yet, but maybe this is the announcement. And so we'll be there. You can get your tickets as soon as they go on sale at Ticketmaster. That's June 8th. Otherwise, you can send us an email. You can follow us on UEL Esports on all social media, and at uelesports.com for our website.
Titus, thank you. I'm going to pat myself on the back for having invited you back, because you delivered just as I expected you would.
Awesome.
I think business owners will be intrigued by a different type of industry that they're not used to, but you can learn from any industry. And I really thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me back.
My pleasure.
Have a good day.
I'm Bruce Hurwitz. Thank you for watching. And as always, please stay focused on success.